seven wonders, so the travelers always tell. Some gardens and some towers, I guess you know them well. But now the greatest wonder is in Uncle Sam's fair land. It's the King Columbia River and the great Grand Coulee Dam. She heads up the Canadian Rockies where the rippling waters glide, come a-tumbling down the canyon to meet the salty tide. In the great Pacific Ocean where the sun sets in the west, it's the King Columbia River and the land I love the best. She heads down her granite canyons and she bends across the Lee like a dancing, prancing stallion on her stairway to the sea. Cast your eyes upon the greatest thing yet built by human hands. It's the King Columbia River and the great Grand Coulee Dam. Crystal glitter of the wild and the windward spray, man, it fought the pounding waters, met a watery grave. She tore her boats to splinters, but she gave men dreams the dream of the day the Coulee Dam would cross that wild and wasted stream. Now at Bonneville on the river, there's a green and a beautiful sight. It's the Bonneville Dam rising in the sun so clear and white. While the leaping salmon play along the ladders and the rocks, there's a steamboat load of gasoline whistling past her docks. Uncle Sam took up the challenge in the year of 33 for the farmer and the factory and all of you and me. He said, roll along Columbia, you can ramble to the sea, but river, while you're rambling, you can do some work for me. And now in Washington and Oregon, you can hear the factories hum, making chrome, making manganese and light aluminum. And there is a flying fortress now that fights for Uncle Sam, spawned upon the Columbia River and the great Grand Coulee Dam. There is a flying fortress that fights for Uncle Sam, spawned upon the Columbia River in the great Grand Coulee Dam. Now that song was written in a different time. So Woody Guthrie was thinking about how great all these factories would be, all this power coming from the great Columbia River. And Woody Guthrie wrote that song back in the late 1930s. And he wrote that song and about 30 other songs when he was out in the Pacific Northwest for about a month with the people who were working on the Grand Coulee Dam. I lived in Seattle for about 12 years, and I never made it to that side of the mountains. You know, Washington State is separated by a mountain range, and everything west of it is green and lush, and that's where all the carpetbaggers like me go. Stay for a few years, and some stay forever. But when I decided to move back east, I thought it would be good to make a pilgrimage to the place where Woody Guthrie wrote these great songs, Pastures of Plenty, Hard Traveling. Some of his best songs really were written in that period. So I got my 67 Dodge Dart and I drove up the Cascade Mountain Range, doing about 48 miles an hour up that long mountain. Came down the other side of the mountain doing about 76 miles an hour. And I had circled on a map a town that I wanted to see up near the Coulee Dam called Electric City. Electric City, that's the name of the town. I thought, I gotta go see what this town looks like. Electric City. I imagine it probably looked a little bit like a pinball machine, you know, with all these tubes and bells. And I got to Electric City and I found out it was just really kind of a wide spot in the road.
with a motel and, you know, tumbleweeds growing through it. I checked into a motel in Electric City, and I was kind of thirsty. I thought it'd be nice to have a beer. And there are no taverns in Electric City, so I got in my car, drove a couple more miles to the town of Grand Coulee. And there was a tavern in Grand Coulee, but it was closed. And I was getting thirsty. So I looked at my map again, and I saw that you can drive across the Coulee Dam into a town called Coulee Dam. And so that's where I went, and I found a tavern, and it was open, and it was hopping. The women's bowling team had just let out, and all these people were in there shooting some strange version of cutthroat at the pool table, and they were having a great time. And I sat down at a bar stool, and I realized as I was looking around that, except for the bartender, I was really the only white person in that tavern. Everybody else was Indian, Native American. And I was sitting next to an Indian who seemed to be about my age, and he was the kind of guy who, after he'd had a few drinks, was a little pissed off at the world. And I knew this because I was sitting next to him. I was just getting over a cold, and I coughed, and he looked at me and he said, "If you're contagious, I'd appreciate it if you moved to another stool." And I looked back at him and I said, "Well, you know, I've had this cold for a while, actually. I think I'm over the contagious part of the cold." And he looked back at me and he said, "You guys gave us smallpox." Well, he kind of had me there. The conversation wasn't exactly going uphill, and I thought maybe I just should move to another stool. But then I thought, no, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to try to get through and see if I can learn something about this guy. And I did. I talked to him for a little while, and I did get to know his story. And after things went on a little while, we became sort of friends. And he told me about his story and being an Indian who lived in Alaska and went and fought in Vietnam and was wounded there, and came back to Alaska and realized that his people were down in the Colville Indian Reservation. You know, the thing that really made me sit there at that stool was thinking back when I was growing up in New Mexico. My father used to take us camping. And we went camping one time at the Kit Carson National Park, and it was above Taos, New Mexico. And we were camped out, and an Indian in a pickup truck pulled through our campsite, next to our campsite, and the Indian got out of the pickup truck, and he was another guy that, after he'd had a few drinks, was a little pissed off the world, and he was yelling close to where we were, and my father went over to see what was going on, and he started shoving his finger at my father and said, "You white men stole our water rights, and you white men, you took our lands, and you white men, you've done all this oppressing of us." And my father said, wait a minute. He said, "I'm not white." He said, "I'm Irish." And the Indian fellow reached back into the cab of his pickup, and he pulled out a bottle of beer and he handed it to my father, and they put their arms around each other and started cursing the white man together. So I was sitting talking to Willie, was the name of this Indian fella. He asked me if I was from the area. I said, "No, I'm a stranger in town." And he said to me, I'll never forget it, he said, "I'm a stranger everywhere I go. When I came down from Alaska in the year of '81, I was headed for Grand Coulee, the Colville Reservation. The tribe of the Nespelem, I learned that I was one, and of this rocky soil I was a living son. I'm a stranger on this land, in the country where my people are from. I'm now of a homeless band. I sit in the Coulee taverns, drinking up all the 'cause long before the day I was born, I was a stranger here. A stranger in the army when they sent me off to Nam, dodging the bullets of other native people. We went to bomb. I took one through the shoulder and I got one in the arm. But shrapnel and metal are not the kind of weapons that done me harm. I'm a stranger on this land, in the country where my people are from. I'm now of a homeless band. I sit in the Coulee taverns, drinking up all the beer, 'cause long before the day I was born, I was a stranger here. The big dam holds the water, the desert holds the dirt, the reservation holds the wretched people of the earth, who once provided for themselves, who fished and traveled around, who never once imagined what would happen to this ground. I'm a stranger on this land, in the country where my people are from. I'm now of a homeless man. I sit in the Coulee taverns, drinking up all the beer, 'cause long before the day I was born, I was a stranger here. When I came down from Alaska, I was looking for a home, but after 6 years on this ground, I find that I have none. But someday rise the phoenix from the ashes and the dirt, and no more will my people and I be strangers on this earth. I'm a stranger on this land, in the country where my people are from. I'm now of a homeless band. I sit in the Coulee taverns, drinking up all the beer, 'cause long before the day I was born,